New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Good morning, everyone. So let's take a nice cleansing breath as we prepare to have this Science of Mind and Spirit conversation on this glorious Saturday, or whatever day of the week it might be that you're watching the recording. Simply breathing, allowing ourselves to be present. It's good to be with you all. So, in case you do not know me, my name is Reverend Dr. Raymont Anderson. I'm the founding minister and spiritual director of a new Centers for Spiritual Living teaching center called the Center for Spiritually Integrated Arts. Now, today we are going to dive into what I affectionately refer to as Science of Mind and Spirit 4.0. And today we are going to explore this through the archives. And today, because sometimes Reverend Ray likes to run his mouth. So our intention is to cover two documents: How to Make Your Faith Real and A Brave New World. Say it again, Ray. A Brave New World. So now, if you are ready, how to make your faith real, starting with this from the archives. Number one, right off the bat, your faith already is real. It can't help but to be. So let's start with that. Your faith is already real. So the question becomes, it's real, but in what manner is it real? Meaning, what is my faith already right now doing within my life? On page 2 of the document from the archives, Dr. Holmes says, but God also has some of his being in us. Yeah, we're going to read it the way he wrote it with the genders. Just let's breathe. It is only because God is in us that we exist. It was to this God within him that Jesus prayed when he said, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. We are surrounded by this divine presence, and it is in us. Okay? Now, one of the things that I love to do is, in terms of being open at the top, is to do a remix. Now, we're going to get to the remix in a moment, but for now, let's visit something that Dr. Holmes says in Ideas of Power. The only God you will ever know, you will discover within yourself. That doesn't mean that you are God. God is what I am, but I am not God, and thank God. But what I am is made of what? There's only God, so I'm made of God. He is all over, in all, and through all. Now, there are two fundamental things you and I believe, as I understand it. God is a divine presence inhabiting eternity and indwelling in our own heart. Okay, so we got that, right? Because we're gonna dive in on something. So pause for a second and look at these and bring to your mind's eye, what do you think they are? Now, they're four different images of the same substance. We'll just start with that. And often you will hear people reference the idea, you are not a drop in the ocean, you are the ocean in a drop. Rumi. Yes, while that is true, how many of us actually saw the ocean in that drop? This is one of the reasons why I personally, this is me, why I don't like this analogy. But it's also one of the reasons why I love this analogy, not just because I love chocolate cake, but when we think of this, cake, cake is God. But when you take a slice out, the slice is not all of the cake, but all of the slice is chocolate cake. And soon as you see it, you see what it is. You don't have to extrapolate that it is from something else. This is why Yeshua, Jesus said, when you see me, you see who I am from. You see that which is God, the infinite. You see that by seeing me. So this idea of being it is not just within us. If God is all there is, circle, circumference nowhere, center everywhere, then right where each of us is, the allness must be. So when Holmes is talking to the audience of that era, they understood the Christian language, the Christian ideology. So he's reminding them, don't get twisted in your ego to think that you are God. But you are. There is only God. So what else could you be other than it? So breathe and recognize that we are divine incarnations of it. And it's not just within us, because then there has to be a within is God, but on the outside is what? The inside, the outside, the upside, the downside, the right, the left, the front, the back, all of it has to be God. All that we are is the divine individualizing itself. Back to that archives document, page 2 still. We are also surrounded by a law of good which receives the direct impress of our thought and acts upon it. When Jesus said, it is done unto you as you believe, he was implying that there is a law which acts upon our belief, or our faith, and our confidence in it. He also said it acts on our belief in the way we believe. And that is why he said, it is done unto you as you believe. Dr. Holmes goes on to say, you see, Jesus used this power for everything. He used it to turn water into wine, to multiply the loaves and fishes, to heal the sick, to raise the dead. And moreover, here is an idea which we perhaps have overlooked. Jesus actually said that what things soever ye desire when ye pray, believe that you receive them and you shall have them. And he meant exactly what he said. Breathe. Because if we're really going to dive into this, then it's important to, let's jump over to the extension study course, lesson 15, page 336. Dr. Holmes says, turn again to our lesson, page 137, chapter 8, the power of thought. Proverbs 23:7 says, for as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. This does not say that people are what they think they are. It says they are as they think. As they think. See, it's easy to think about health and well-being. Think about peace on earth, goodwill to all. It's easy to think about it, but what does it mean to think as health and wealth and joy and love and peace? He goes on to say, from our viewpoint, it means that as the subjective state of our consciousness is, so shall our conditions become. Jesus said, what things soever you desire, believe that you have them and you shall have them. Okay, so we're familiar with, or we may not be familiar with, at the end of the textbook, there are several illustrations, several graphs where Dr. Holmes is reminding us of the various aspects in the teaching symbol. the various aspects of. And in the center is the subjective, as we just said, whatever the subjective state. Okay. Now let's think about, you've often seen the example of the iceberg. What's above the iceberg? What's below the iceberg? Below the iceberg, the subconscious, the unconscious, the collective consciousness, etc. Okay. But how do we know what is in that aspect? Look around. Think about what is it that we are feeling? What are we seeing? What are we doing? When we're having a conversation, what is coming up? Any triggers? Any microaggressions? Any whatever it is, be mindful of it, because all of it is indicating where we are in our consciousness. Dr. Holmes says, in this thing called you, if you wish to be successful, you must identify yourself with success. If you wish to be healthy, you must identify yourself with health. If you wish to be wealthy, if you wish to be loved, if you wish to be in a world that works for all, you must identify yourself with that very thing. The law of identity is a definite thing. That with which you mentally identify yourself sets up an image of thought in your consciousness, which tends to attract the situation. Now, note he says, which tends to attract the situations with which you are mentally identified. Goes into that whole concept of our mental equivalent. The thoughts, our beliefs, our consciousness, the words that we use to communicate, whether spoken, written, signed, text, typed, doesn't matter. The emotions and feelings and our actions, all of that goes into this idea of how are we identifying? The subjective state of your consciousness, which means the sum total of your unconscious thought processes, is continually attracting or repelling. This process goes on beneath the threshold of the conscious mind. We got that. There is only one mind, and that mind is God, and that mind is active in so many ways. The conscious, the superconscious, the subconscious, the unconscious, the I wish I was conscious, it's all of it. And if we want to change how we experience life, then we must be willing to go into that space of, what do I think? How do I think? What does it mean to truly cogito ergo sum? I think, therefore I am. What does it mean to think? And how am I using this thing called thoughts? When in a conversation, when challenged with a medical situation, when watching the news, what are my thoughts about this? Whatever it is. And how am I stewarding my thoughts to be able to change my experience? And not just mine individually. That whole idea of being an island and very individualistic spiritual practices, it's time for that to go. Old new thought. It's time to move into new thought. And in new thought, we understand the concept of, as I always say, God having that conversation because of Cain and Abel. God having that conversation. Where is your brother? Yo, am I my brother's keeper? To which I say, am I my brother's keeper? No. I am my brother and my brother is me. Am I my sister's keeper? No. I am my sister and my sister is me. Am I my non-gender conforming, gender fluid, gender rich siblings keeper? No. I am them and they are me. It's time to move into the beloved community in this thing called New Thought. Now, I love this article that is in a Unity magazine where they talk about the three faces of God. And they reference God as first person, the God, quote unquote, within, or God as us. Second person, God as thou, God as he, which typically when you're speaking to God or about God. And the third person second person talking to God. You, God, help me. You, God, are wonderful, etc. Third person, when we are talking about God. Okay? Now, I love, if you know me, you know I love comic books. So we're going to look at this exact same thing through the lens of Spider-Man. First person, I am Spider-Man. And I know Dr. Tracy Brown is probably laughing at me right now. Second person, you are Spider-Man. Third person, he is Spider-Man, or there is a Spider-Man. So now, what does that mean? One, you are the individual expression of God. So you can take that on and say, I am spirit, I am source, I am what it is. And when you say that, be mindful. Are you thinking as the universe thinks? Are you thinking from that space of infinite creative potential, infinite possibility, infinite joy, love, wonder, creative? Are you thinking as that? Because oftentimes what I notice we still do in New Thought, because we are practicing old New Thought, it's easier for us to still do. And I know that that which is God, even though in religious science, we're not talking to God, we're supposed to be, but I still hear many references where we are talking to, which is, I understand, because there are times when in our human form, we talk to ourselves. So I got the concept. And for linguistic purposes, I got the concept. But are we ready to bob and weave and surf through all of this, recognizing that this thing that we refer to as the divine is us in totality, so that when we speak, it is life itself speaking through us, in us, and as us, that there is no separation. We refer to and God's consciousness and our consciousness, and yet there is only one consciousness. But because we don't necessarily have the linguistic skills right now, we still talk in duality, which once again, for linguistic purposes, is fine, as long as we still understand and in some way conceptualize and move into a space of, I understand that God is all there is. Therefore, what it is must be me. Therefore, my thoughts are. Therefore, my words are. Therefore, my actions are. The way in which the universe, God itself, is thinking, speaking, feeling, and moving in this and as this, which is me. Okay? So as we started, your faith already is real. So once again, the question is, in what manner is it real? So let's ask, our prayers then, to be effective, must be affirmations, or I refer to them as declarations, which are so formulated in the mind as to produce an actual inner acceptance, feeling it, of the desires expressed. It is as simple, though maybe not easy, as simple as this. And perhaps it is the very reason why this simplicity, why it eludes us. We must actually bring the mind to accept the good it desires even before it has experienced that particular good. Just as we would have to plant a melon seed before the law of nature can produce melons for us, in the same sense, we are planting our desires in the garden of creative law, creative good, the law that is always saying yes, which then produces the plant exactly as the seed, the DNA of the seed, and never something else. Okay? So how clear are we of what we desire? When we talk about this thing called faith, remember, faith you already have. Just like the electromagnetic spectrum, it is already present. And it shows up in a variety of ways. Some are visible to the naked eye, some are not. Just like temperature, there is no hot as a separate thing from cold. There is one spectrum, and at one end of the spectrum, there is heat. At the other end of the spectrum, there is cold. Why do I mention this? Because it's the exact same thing with faith. Faith is. There is either non-life affirming faith, which shows up as fear, worry, anxiety, or there is life affirming faith, which shows up as confidence and trust and grace and love. So it's not a question of, do we have faith? We do. But the question is, how am I applying faith? When I used to be a fundamental Christian, we would often say, worry is praying to the devil. Now, in New Thought, we understand devil is the idea of lies. That is that which is the untruth. For me to think, I am not worthy, I am a sinner, I am just so stupid, whatever that is, we would refer to that as praying to the devil. We are believing whatever indoctrinated lies that have been accepted, but they are lies nonetheless. That means I am applying my faith. I am trusting in this non-life affirming thing. I am trusting in the thing that I fear. I am trusting in the boogeyman, right? So we can trust in a non-life affirming way too. I trust that, not seeing into the closet, that there is something lurking in the darkness, and it. So our invitation once again, how are we applying our faith? What are we applying our faith to, and in what way are we doing so? There's a passage in the Bible, the Judeo-Christian Bible, James chapter 4, verse 3. Ye ask, and you receive not, because you ask amiss. You ask amiss, that ye may consume it upon your lust. Now, let's go to a different translation so we understand in English. Thank you, Shakespeare and King James. You ask and you do not receive because you ask amiss, or you ask with the wrong motivation. You ask with the wrong motives. And you ask this way so that you can satisfy your own pleasures in a selfish manner. That's in essence what this is saying. So once again, when we pray, when we treat, when we do our spiritual practices, are we doing them for the sake of twiddling our own metaphysical thumbs? Right? Like, there is only God, and God is good, and I am great, and as long as I am great and keep my mind focused on all the good in the world and all the good that God is, then everything's okay. But you do know that in Texas, there are people trying to get across a river, but because of what the governor has set up, they are hurting and dying as a result. But there is only God, and God is good, and so God is all there is, and I can't focus on that, because if I focus on that, then I bring what in the metaphysical malpractice? New Thought is a liberation theology, whether we want to collectively acknowledge that or not. And I say this specifically because in our Declaration of Principles, number 5, we believe the ultimate goal of life to be a complete emancipation, a complete freedom from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. That right there says liberation theology. Not necessarily the way the term was originally created, but nonetheless, that is what it is. So we ask. Oftentimes we are asking because we don't really know what we're asking for. Even when we vision, we're going to talk about visioning in a moment. Even when we vision as a spiritual practice, we are visioning amiss oftentimes. The reason being, oftentimes our motives for visioning, honestly, are, how does this benefit me? How does this benefit my community? Not how does it benefit all of CSL? How does it benefit all of New Thought? How does it benefit all of this thing called Earth? So when we start recognizing that how we individually show up affects the collective, then we are applying our faith in a life-affirming way that changes, transforms, heals. We become a beneficial presence to the world. We become 21st century New Thought Good Samaritans. We are here. We are here to heal, to nurture, to offer this teaching in ways that demonstrates equity and justice and liberation and food and all kinds of things for others. Not just for, I'm in my house and I'm happy and all is well. All is well, but your neighbor's house is burning to the ground. But I'm in my house and all is well, so be it. You ask and yet you do not receive because you are asking amiss. You are asking from a place where your faith is non-life affirming. Because if I am not also in service to others and it's just about me, then my actual, once again, what subconscious, in terms of what's going on in the subconscious, the unconscious, the collective consciousness, all of that, how does that play into our lives? It shows up as selfishness, as being stingy and greedy, even though we may not readily identify it as that. That's what it actually is. Dr. Holmes goes on to say, therefore, when we come to use this law of good for definite purposes, we must keep this thought clear, that there is something that operates on our thinking exactly as we think it. Keep that in mind. Of course, this calls for practice and patience and a sort of good-natured flexibility, because we don't always keep our thoughts focused on the thing that we desire to experience. But when we know that what we are working with is a definite principle, remember, we are not bound by precedent, we are bound by principle. When we know that we are working with a definite principle, then we have the courage to go on and continue until finally our thoughts, our mental equivalent, do become affirmative, life affirming. This is what is meant by scientific prayer. This is what is meant by what we call right mental and or right spiritual practice. This is what we mean by using the science of mind and spirit consciously and for definite purposes. Now, remember this, vision. Remember that for a little bit later. So what I'm saying is this. He said this at the Sermon by the Sea at Asilomar, which just ended anyhow, you know this. What I am saying is this. There is a law that backs up the vision, and the law is immutable. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. There is a power transcendent beyond our needs, our little wants. Goes back to that Bible verse, our own selfish or private desires. There is a power transcendent beyond our needs and our little wants. Demonstrating a dime is good if one needs it, or healing oneself of a pain is certainly good if one has it, right? Now, note, he's not denying the need for the dime, money. He's not denying that there is a thing called pain, a thing called disease, a thing called illness. He's not denying it. He's saying that if that is your experience, then healing yourself is certainly the thing to do. But beyond that, at the real feast of the tabernacle of the Almighty is the temple of the living God. In the banquet hall of heaven, there is something beyond anything that you and I have touched. So keeping in mind that whatever the dime, there is something so far beyond the dime that my mind at this present moment can't even fathom it. Health and well-being. I say I want to feel healthy on a scale of 0 to 10. I want to feel a 10, but there is something so far beyond the 10 that my mind can't even wrap around it. So remain open at the top, so that even when you say on a scale of 1 to 10 and even greater, I am willing to feel a 20. I am willing to experience a 20 in health and well-being, because my vision is aligned with that. It's not aligned just with the flesh and blood. And yes, that is part of it. But I also know that there is so much more to how Ray can show up. There is so much more to how Ray can imagine and create. And so I remain open to the possibility and the potential for how I create space for that. And that is the invitation for you as well. Dr. Holmes goes on to say, you are religious science. Note, he didn't say you are religious scientists. He said you are religious science. I am not. I am only the one who put something together. In other words, take me off the pedestal. Stay open at the top. I have passed the baton to you. Now, where will you go with it? I do not even take myself seriously, but I take what I am doing seriously. You are religious science. You are ministers, our teachers, our practitioners, our lay people. You, the community of, you are religious science. Now, you find me 1,000 people in the world who know what religious science is and use it and live it as a way of life, and I myself will see a new world, a new heaven, and a new earth right here and right now, because there is a cosmic power wrapped up in a cosmic consciousness and purposiveness. It has purpose that is equal to the vision, we're going to come back to that again, which releases it. Are we stepping into that? Do we know what religious science is? If someone were to walk up to you today and say, what is religious science? Without saying what it is not, state what it is. In 5 sentences or less, what is religious science? What does it mean to practice it? What does it mean to live it as a way of life? What if someone offered you $1 million for each statement that you could answer in a clear and concise manner? This is what religious science is. This is what it means to practice it. This is what it means to live it as a way of life. When we have that level of clarity, there is no more mistaking us with Scientology. Because we know who we are, we show up as what we know we are. We show up as the very embodiment of religious science, which the founder of the movement said we are. Are we ready to live into that? Because he goes on in the document, the archives document, here is where you must keep faith within yourself, with the divine presence within you, and with the law of good, which is operating on your thoughts, operating on your mental equivalent, because this law has no choice but to operate exactly as you think. And if in your mind you are delaying the activity of good, saying, well, maybe it'll happen by and by, you actually are keeping it away from you. This is one of the reasons why when we treat as present, knowing right here and right now, I am healthy, I am well. We don't say, and one day I'll be healthy, one day I'll be wealthy. We don't put it, we put it right here and right now. And that's why. Because to put it over there, somewhere in there, we are, well, I don't know if it's actually going to, maybe, I'm hoping. Rather than declaring what we are desiring to experience as a known, principled fact. The process is so simple that it seems almost impossible. So much good can come out of it, but it can. And you are the only one who can ever prove it to yourself. Just like love. If I ask you, do you love someone? Yes. Who do you love? My children, my grandchildren, my partner. You love someone. But if I said, prove it to me, you can't prove to me you love them. You can show me acts of kindness. You can show me that you care for them. You can show me certain actions. But how do I know that that's love? Only you know that that's love. Because there are many people who abuse people who do it in the name of love, do it in the name of God. Because they have it twisted. their consciousness, non-life affirming, their faith, non-life affirming, their mental equivalent, non-life affirming, is showing up as, and yet the words say, I love. Only you can prove it to yourself. And then, having proven, I am religious science, I am a demonstration of life affirming faith, trust, grace, conviction, and love. And I show up as that. Now it informs your and move your feet. Who you are being informs what you are doing, but you can only be what you know yourself to be, and you can only do what you believe and trust yourself to be able to do. For just as no one can live for you, so of course, no one can think for you. Make up your mind, determine, decide, be convicted right here and right now to think for yourself. And when you get right down to the nuts and bolts of it, it is making God a reality for you. Is it not? Because now you are embodying what it means to be the divine. You're not just thinking and wishing and hoping and praying to God out there somewhere, but you are embodying it. And when you embody it, you show up as it. Now, document number 2 from the archives, a brave new world. In other words, a world that works for all. That's what I'm calling it. Now, if you're ready, let's go. Page 3 of that document, Dr. Holmes says, we are indeed on the pathway of a great adventure. The adventure that Jesus must have had in mind when he said, greater works than these will you do. This achievement is not to be found in books or preachments or proclamations. Fortunately, only the individual can make this discovery for themselves. This must be the starting point. The search must begin with the self, but it does not end there. From this self-discovery, we can then reach out to others. Reach out and share science of mind. Help make the world a better place, right? You got that. It starts with us, but then it reaches out to others and finally, inevitably, to the entire world. We need not be bound by the ignorance and superstition of others, nor by what they think or feel. How many times have you heard people say, there will always be war? Can you imagine? And that may or may not be true. I don't even want to get into that right now. But can you imagine? Can you imagine the possibility of there not being? Now, keep in mind, we can imagine unicorns, and we can imagine mermaids, and we can imagine all kinds of fictional things. A young man, teenager in high school, dressed in a spider-ish thing, slinging webs and helping people in the neighborhood, the friendly neighborhood. We can imagine that. We can paint things from our imagination and create movies from our imagination, but we can't imagine a world where there is no war. Why not? It's imagination. So it starts with us. It does not end with us, and we need not continue to be bound by the superstition and the ignorance and the indoctrination of others, including the collective consciousness. Our invitation is to shift even the collective consciousness. We each have our own life to live, and as that life is without end, life is without end. The progress we make along this eternal pathway is up to us. There is no anthropomorphic God wanting something from us, for us. It is only there. We determine how we use this thing called science of mind. Not God, not the universe. It is individualizing as us. Therefore, we get to choose how to use the creative process. That's why you have things from as far as Hitler using the creative process, to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi, Yogananda, and others. Same creative process, same law of mind in action. And we all get to choose life affirming or life denying. What are you choosing? How are you choosing to engage science of mind and spirit? Dr. Holmes goes on. The cold fact is that such growth may only occur as a result of what we do to ourselves, not what something else does to us. We cannot, like a fairy godmother, wave a wand and have what we desire appear. Doesn't work that way. Instead, we have to create a thought, a belief, a paradigm. A thought is more powerful than any wand or any magic of some mythological magicians. We need to face life in the light of a new truth, a new thought, a new understanding, and a new conviction that we are in partnership with the divine. Now, note that concept, partnership with. It's duality, but it's linguistic convenience. We are in partnership in the same way that my hand is in partnership with my arm, the tendons, the muscles, the same way that my heart is in partnership with my lungs. It's all one body. It's all one life. All of us, all of us, all of us are infinitely in partnership with life as life. He goes on. Then we may receive direct divine guidance and know how to live as human beings, because we first have discovered that we are divine beings. We are not simply spiritual beings having a human experience. We are spiritual beings having a spiritual experience that we call human. I am an incarnation of the divine. Call it whatever you want to call it, the thing itself, the one mind, life, God, source. I am that. And yet the name that it is called in this form is Raymont. A rose by any other name would smell as sweet. Be mindful that you are an individualized expression of the only thing there is, God. I am one with the infinite and perfect spirit, the giver of all good and perfect gifts. I open my mind and my heart, and indeed my body, to the inflow of this divine presence. I know that this living presence is in every cell of my body and every function of my being. I accept it as my health of body, here and now. I accept it as the health of my mind, here and now. I accept it as the health of my relationships, here and now. I accept it as the health of my bank account, here and now. I accept it as that which releases me from all that is unlike the perfect expression of life itself. There is no doubt or fear in my mind. Note, there is no non-life affirming doubt or fear, because there can be life affirming doubt and fear. You're walking down the street and you're tempted to take a shortcut down an alley, and you feel this thing that says, no, 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 that's doubt. That is life affirming, because it is your inner divine guidance system saying, no, do not do this. It's your intuition. You're in a burning building and your adrenaline kicks in. Go. That fear to self-preserve is natural, it is innate, it is biological. So there is no non-life affirming doubt or fear in my mind, in my body, in my consciousness that could reject in any way all that God is right here and right now. My conscious acceptance of the fullness of the presence of God flows out in joy and in love to bless all whom I meet, all whom I would cross paths with, all whom I would help, those with whom I would share this inner, divine peace, love, joy. And I decree that the loved one that I now bring into the scope of my mind is blessed and healed through the presence of the good that is all there is, within and outside, above, below, to the right, to the left. It is all that is. The radiance of joy in my own heart brings happiness into the lives of all who I meet, all who are around me. Every person whose path I cross, The abundance that prospers me supplies everyone around me with the good things of life. The light that warms the center of my own being so shines forth that all may find guidance and warmth and comfort in its rays. Now, that all may find. How are we showing up in the world so that all may find the truth of their divine magnificence? See, as the best kept secret, we know that there are people out there who are suffering right now. You can call it whatever you want to call it. But when people are trying to save their children to get across the river in Texas, and yet a certain governor is creating barbed wire and buoys with saw blades on it, that there is suffering in the world. There are people right now who have lost homes in Hawaii. There are people still recovering and fleeing from the war in the Ukraine. There is suffering all over this planet. There are family members right now who are mourning the death of, the murder of their beloved cousin, brother, son, grandson, nephew, who was murdered in New York recently. There are people who are suffering. And yet, science of mind and spirit, we say we're the best kept secret. Is it not time to bring that secret out of the closet so that we can be a beneficial presence to others? So that everything in this affirmation declaration that Dr. Holmes is inviting us into, that we are the very demonstration of it. We are religious science, after all. He goes on, realizing that we are in the midst of an ever-present good that not all are experiencing right now, and believing that there is a law that brings everything of its nature into our lives. Should we not also help bring that into the lives of others who do not right now know or understand this? How are we helping those who are the unhoused? How are we breaking fishes and loaves so that those who are hungry have food? How are we showing up in the world, not just in our siloed centers, here, and here, but as a collective called Centers for Spiritual Living, as a collective called New Thought, as a collective called Religious Science? How are we showing up? Now, breathe as we approach the end. Remember, I told you we would come back to this vision. Now, there is in our global vision a statement, the very first one. We envision all people, all beings, and all life as expressions of God, right? That is our vision. Now, one of the things I do for myself, for me, so I have a practice, is I've gone through all of the global vision and turned it into action for me. So we envision all people, gotcha. We create communities where all people, all beings, and all life are treated, honored, and celebrated as expressions of God. See, we do a lot of diversity and inclusion talk, and mostly what we're talking about is bringing the numbers in. We're not talking about honoring these people. We're not talking about celebrating the diversity of them. We just want more people, more butts in the seats, so we have more income through the tithes so that the center can stay open, so that the minister can be paid. Is that or is that not out of alignment then? Yeah, remember, praying amiss? Remember that concept? Okay, so keeping in mind. We create this. Now, for me, the invitation is, what is mine to do to create it? We see a world in which we provide and engage. So we see a world in which each and every person lives in alignment with their highest spiritual principle. This is all part of a Brave New World, mind you, that second archives document. The highest spiritual principle, emphasizing unity with God and connection with each other. A world in which individually and collectively we are called to a higher state of consciousness and action. Cool? Because we provide and engage in practices in which each and every person is provided the means to live in alignment with their highest spiritual principle, emphasizing unity with God and connection with each other. And this calls all of us, individually and collectively, to embody a higher state of consciousness, which results in measurable action. The vision must become action, right? So, a brave new world involves creating a brave new world. Now, the last one that I'm going to mention for today. We envision a world where personal responsibility joins with social conscience in every area of the political. You know how we just love to not go, we don't want to talk about the political stuff because political, but our vision, our global vision has that word in it. Okay? In every area of the political, the corporate, the academic, and social sectors, providing sustainable structures to further the emerging global consciousness. For me, we or I actively engage in the systems and structures at every level, locally, nationally, globally, to ensure that each and every person has enough food, home, sense of belonging, a world of peace and harmony, enfranchisement, equity, and justice. By going into each of those areas, the political, the corporate, the academic, etc. So how are we envisioning and then acting? Dr. Holmes reminds us, one of the greatest difficulties in the new order of thought is that we are likely to indulge in too much theory and too little practice. Right? He said, treat and move your feet, which I say, life-affirming faith without works, action, is a form of metaphysical malpractice that is masquerading as spiritual practice, and it causes more harm in the world. Breathe. So keeping in mind how to make your faith real, document number 1, your faith is already real. So recognizing that your faith is already real, ask, how am I applying it? How am I practicing it? Not just theorizing, but how am I practicing it? In order to create a brave new world, a world that truly does work for all. Breathe. We're going to close out with a prayer. And once again, the 2 documents that we went over today were how to make your faith real, making your faith real, a brave new world. If you want more information about them or you're not sure where to find them, feel free to email those who are at New Thought Media Network or email me, and I will make sure that I direct you, or we will direct you in order to find it so that you can actually read the entire document yourself. They're very short pages, like 4, I think both of them are 4 pages at most, maybe 5. So it's not the size of my textbook, okay? Now, before I go into prayer, I just want to remind you to like, follow, share, subscribe to the New Thought Media Network in all of the places that it shows up, YouTube, Facebook, etc. Like, follow, subscribe, and share. And for next week, I will be back. So be ready, have your notebook and stuff, because we're going to dive in, more than likely, to 2 more documents next week from the archives. So in this moment, let us simply anchor and breathe. Anchor and breathe in this moment, recognizing the isness and allness of life itself. Showing up in, through, and as each and every one of us. There is only God, and what it is, it must be what I am. And this being the truth of all there is, this is the truth for everyone watching live now and everyone watching the recording later. There is only God. And so I breathe gratitude and joy. I breathe the power that comes with knowing that I am an individualized expression of the thing that keeps planets in orbit, the thing that created the planets, keeps grass growing, keeps hearts beating, keeps living life. There is only one life, and that life is God, and that life is powerful and present and joy-filled and creative. and loving. And that life is my life right now, because there is only the one life. And that life is the life of all right now. So I breathe this joy and gratitude to be able to recognize this, to be able to be aware of this, to be able to embody this and allow it to inform my beingness, which informs my doingness. I apply my faith in life-affirming ways, and in so doing, I show up as bravery itself to manifest and create a brave new world, a world that works for all, a world where the collective consciousness that currently exists of lack, scarcity, racism, sexism, homomisia, transmesia, all of these ills and diseases no longer exist in the collective consciousness. That is what it means to elevate, to be open at the top, to rise above, to shift, transform, to be progressive in and as religious science. I live, move, and have my beingness as that which is. I am that I am, ever becoming, ever living, ever expressing. And the law says yes. That means we do not simply live in answered prayer. We live as the very demonstration of prayer made fact, prayer made real, prayer made flesh, prayer demonstrating as our lived experiences here and now. That's what is so. Breathe. And so it is. Namaste, much love, much appreciation. Feel free to, once again, like, share, follow, etc. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors and donors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown Atlanta, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, and all of our individual donors and sponsors. Thank you for being a part of the New Thought Media Network. Please come be you.